Round 2 of Formula Drift Pro 2 was to take place at Evergreen Speedway in Monroe, Washington. This is actually one of the faster tracks on the FD schedule, so in preparation we decided to change to a taller rear gear so that we could get more wheel speed in fourth to tackle that bank. But after looking at the weather forecast right before we left, we realized that the whole event was going to be a washout. It was supposed to rain the entire time, so we promptly switched back to the previous gear set. We figured that adding more grip to the car and limiting the wheel speed in fourth gear would allow me to have more control on a wet track. We arrived at the track Wednesday to go over the car as usual, and did as much as we could until we were all miserable with wet shoes and socks. It was cold. We felt prepared for Thursday practice, and as expected, it was a very rainy morning. Pro took to the track first, and it was like ice out there. We could tell they were struggling to find the grip. However, as Pro 2 prepared to take the track, the rain started to actually let up a little bit and allowed the bank to start getting dry, but the infield stayed pretty wet. We quickly realized that as the bank dried out, the gear set we had in the car just did not have enough wheel speed to tackle a dry bank. We decided to actually change back to the taller gear because the chance of rain went down for that day. The second Pro practice was completely dry, and our second Pro 2 practice ended up being completely dry. I was feeling pretty good in my second session of practice when it was mostly dry. However, we were looking at a wet track all Friday. So we actually decided to split the difference between the two gear sets we were using, and we kind of picked the Goldilocks gear, right in the middle. Not quite as much wheel speed, but not as little as a completely wet track. We figured this way I could just drive through it and adjust as needed in the wet. I was feeling pretty good until the end of my second session of practice, when the car started feeling just weird. The steering didn't feel right, it felt like it wanted to understeer or push, and it wanted to over-rotate when I would transition. Overall, I was struggling with the steering, but it wasn't a power steering issue, I knew that much. Unfortunately, the understeer issue caused me to have a little incident where I hit the rear of the car pretty hard on the bank wall. We brought the car in, and upon inspection, we found that there was actually rubber smeared along my front driver's side rotor, preventing the wheel from spinning freely.
That might be an issue.
Essentially, this made the car feel like it was applying brakes just to that front driver's side wheel, which completely made sense as to why it was wanting to pull me up into the bank or spin on transition. It was like I was getting on the brakes. We scraped all the rubber off with a razor blade, and I felt good knowing that it wasn't just me. I wasn't imagining it. I knew something was wrong with the car, and I knew it wasn't my power steering, but I was having so much trouble explaining to my team what was happening. But fortunately we found it, and I was feeling really confident heading into Friday battles. as expected, Friday morning was a very rainy morning. We started out with a very wet, hour-long warm-up in the morning, and that went straight into top 32 battles. I was fortunate to have a bye run in top 32, which put me against Brian Wadman in the top 16. Of course, the weather did not let up on us. It started raining again in our top 16 opening intros. So we were expecting a very wet track, but I felt really confident with the gear set we decided on in practice. Wadman and I initiated on the bank. I was following first, and as we were going along towards about halfway through the bank, 3/4 of the way through the bank, I noticed Wadman getting an extreme amount of angle. And I'm sitting here watching him. It seemed like slow motion, where he was carrying this extremely high angle for a pretty long period of time, or at least it seemed like to me. And the entire time I'm like, is he gonna save it? Is he gonna save it? And I knew that I couldn't bail or give up until I knew for a fact that he didn't have it. And that happened. He started to spin and come down the bank, and at this point, I didn't have anywhere to go. I tried to throw more angle and get on the brakes and stop, but because the track was so wet and slippery, I just couldn't get my car to stop in time. Because the judges deemed the collision his fault, I was given 10 minutes to fix my car, and he would have to take his 5 minutes to fix his car. Fortunately, it seemed like all the damage was really to my front headlight, bash bar, and front driver's side wheel. It didn't seem like the suspension was really bothered, which was very lucky. We went ahead and changed the front wheel and adjusted toe, and felt pretty good to head back to the line. Unfortunately, Brian was not able to fix his car in the 5 minutes, so we ended up having a bye run and got the win into top 8. My top 8 battle was against Chase Schmidt. I was really excited but also kind of nervous for this battle because I knew it was going to be a tough one. This was Chase's home track. He won his Pro-Am series here. He's definitely used to this track, probably in all conditions. Because of that, I knew I had to give it all I had. I led first, and I ended up putting down one of my best lead runs of the day, maybe even the weekend. I was very happy with it and feeling very confident. We switched places, and now I would follow. On the run-up, I realized he was pretty quick on the straightaway, and in 4th gear, I tried to give it a little bit more to try to close the gap, but unfortunately the wet track just got me a little upset and messed me up for my initiation timing, allowing him to gap me. I was sitting here on the bank, it's a wet track, and I knew I had to catch up to him. So slowly throughout the bank, I started closing that gap, and as we entered the infield, I was able to get on his door. I felt really confident with my lead run, and I felt really confident with the second half of my follow run. But I knew that I had that big mistake on the run up, which allowed a huge gap on the bank. And if anything was to cause me to lose, it was definitely going to be that. And I was right. Chase got the win, and it was very well deserved. It was one of my favorite battles of the weekend and some of my favorite driving I've done so far this season. Although we lost in the top 8, I'm really happy that we even made it this far. The car is feeling great. I'm so excited to bring it to Texas, where I hear there's going to be a new track layout. We'll see you there.